Hi, my name's John Morrow. Welcome. This is Resolve to Live Forward. Let me say that again. Resolve to live forward. Here's an open-ended question. Do you feel like you're stuck? Now think about that for just a second. Do you think you're stuck? That could be stuck in a lot of ways. So let me try to help you define what that is, at least in terms of what it means to me, because I'm here looking for individuals who, like me, came to a place in their lives where they didn't know how to move forward, how to move forward with some type of a meaningful purpose. What does that look like? And there are times in our life where we're not sure where we're going because we've been doing the same things over and over again, day after day, in a life that has become very mundane, humdrum, dull, and frankly, seemingly it has very little, if any, meaning. If you're an individual who is like that, this might be the podcast for you. And this is the introductory podcast. And let me begin by saying there are literally hundreds of thousands of podcasts worldwide. This podcast is not revolutionary. It's just another podcast, but it's another podcast that may, and that's the big word here, may possibly have meaning to you. I'm hoping that you will be a part of a tribe. It's not about me, it's going to be about us and what I am striving to do as honestly, as authentically, as transparently, and as unselfishly as possible. I want to share with you some things that have happened in my life and continue to happen in my life every day that have brought me to the place where I feel that this kind of a podcast may have some meaning to a very special group of people out there who, frankly, are just tired of going through routines, the same old, same old. It's not about the demographic necessarily, those who don't have much, those who would be considered to be standard of living, mainstream, middle class, even those who seem to have much and are enjoying abundance, but it's constantly pressure. It doesn't matter about age, although I will say that as you look at me, obviously, I'm not a fresh face in terms of the fact that I've got that fresh look about me. I've been around a long time. You'll get to know who I am a little bit more as we go forward. But again, remember, this is not about me. So today, I want to tell you what the purpose of this podcast is. Resolve to live forward is a conversation. And in the conversation initially, I'll be sharing with you some things that I have learned through the School of Hard Knocks, through relationships that I have had that have profoundly affected me, through coaching techniques that I had and benefited from and have been taught, and through other experiences, as well as hopefully going forward, your personal feedback. And that personal feedback is important because how these conversations develop and the things that we will talk about as a group of people, as a tribe, are going to be very important. We're not all alike, and a podcast is not for everybody, and I can't be all things to all people. What I can be is possibly someone who understands how you feel and cares to speak to what matters to you. Again, I want it to be about you. We all, I think, at times, if we are being completely honest, want to arrive at a place where we feel like we have something meaningful to look forward to when we get up each and every day. Now, please understand, there's an important component here that we need to learn to exercise and that I have learned to practice, and it makes a significant difference. And that is understanding how to be grateful, how to be thankful, how to live a life of gratitude by understanding, knowing, and seeing and identifying those things in our life that are wonderful, magical, dependable, loving, caring, provide, excite, and drive us forward and give us meaning. And that covers a whole plethora of possibilities. At the same time, we want to be able to have a life where every day when we get up, we have, and you're going to hear this definition a lot, a definite, firm plan of action, an end in mind for every day. Now, having an end in mind doesn't always mean that we achieve everything we want to achieve in the course of the day. So as we talk, we'll probably discuss ways that we can better manage the objectives and goals that we set for ourselves during the course of the day. This is something I'm working on, and I'm getting good feedback from a lot of people, but I'm still learning, which brings me to another very, very important point about me. As much as I have learned in my long life, I'm still learning. And the reason why I'm still learning is because I've dedicated myself to this principle. As long as I am cognitively able to understand and see and now analyze, do the analysis, study objectively, but also understand that there's a subjective personal component involved in my interpretation of things. As long as we continue to strive to understand what's going on in our lives and what these things are that we come in confrontation with or confront or meet or experience, we are in a process of learning if we're really taking a good close look at it. We start noticing more, we see more, we begin to question and inquire about more. And as we inquire and question, we learn more about it. And we add great knowledge to our lives, but also valuable information that can be very helpful. There are learning opportunities all the time, each and every single day. And among my core values are the values of the love for learning. And to do that, we'll talk about the various ways that that can happen. Remember, again, it's our conversation. I know you're either listening to me or perhaps watching me as you listen to me, and you're saying, okay, the jury's still out on this guy. I get it. I get it. But the truth of the matter is, as I've discovered and listened to a lot of podcasts, and there are tremendous podcasts out there, amazing, amazing podcasts. But what I've discovered about those that are the most successful is that the host or hostess, in other words, the individual or the individuals that produce and present the podcast, have a specific identifiable, you'll hear this term niche or niche. They have this specific identifiable group of people that have a specific identifiable need. They have a why as to why they listen to the podcast. And they listen to it because the person or persons who are producing and presenting the podcast have the same why or whys. And we identify. This is what you call building a tribe. Now, the term tribe is something I heard from a very dear friend of mine who is also a fellow podcaster. His name is Mark Guy. Guy, by the way, is spelled G-A-I, Mark Guy. Mark had a podcast called Speak Brave, and his central focus was learning how to communicate effectively with courage and with bravery, but also with acumen and grace and poise and power. He's a communications and leadership specialist. He's also a great personal coach. I am seeking to be a personal coach. I have a specific objective in my personal coaching. I will begin by telling you that I do have a background in communications and leadership that actually began back in my college days when I first was a broadcast trainer. I was taking communications in college and was very interested in radio. But once I left the radio business, which I was only in for a brief period of time, and got involved in the business of working out in the general worldview public, I discovered that communications is more of a personal thing. It's less about being heard and more about hearing. One of my core values is that when I sit down in front of someone to have a significant, meaningful, and potentially powerful conversation, I need to apply this fundamental. First of all, I almost always prefer to have this conversation so that I can at least be able to see the person I'm talking to and they can see me. That can really only happen a couple of ways, either in person or through a medium such as this, like on Zoom or StreamYard or Microsoft Teams, something like that. It's important to be able to see and to hear. It reinforces the capacity in the communications process. And the most significant part of communicating with people is listening. There are a number of things that we can do when we listen. But my core principle is this. You've heard the phrase, God gave you one mouth and two ears. Therefore, you should listen twice as much as you talk. And that's good if you're having a conversation on a telephone in some way, form, shape, or fashion through a teleconferencing process. However, for me, since getting in front of someone is really my ultimate goal, and that's why I'm having this podcast, which is video as well as audio, the ultimate goal in my coaching is to use an 80-20 principle. If I'm able to actually see and hear you, then I want to incorporate two eyes and two ears and one mouth. And that's a 5-piece, or if you want to talk about it, it's a 20% for each, 80-20. 80% of the time, I want to be listening intentionally. I want to be hearing what you have to say. A podcast doesn't lend itself to that so much, but a podcast can be a very, very helpful tool to equip you to, number one, discover where you are in your life and what you want to do, and begin to see your way to getting, as I like to say, unstuck from that which is just going through the routines and it's the same old day after day. And in doing that, you then develop this desire to create a more self-discovery directed life. We, I believe, are constantly changing. And if we're constantly changing, we need to accept the fact that change isn't just inevitable, but change can be ideally a great thing, a wonderful thing, a profitable thing, a beneficial thing, a thing that will enrich and make us better. That's the desire that I have in this podcast, Resolve to Live Forward. Now, if you don't fit that particular mindset, that's okay. I've learned that there's only a very, very specific group of people that will be willing to align themselves with me to, in a sense, join with me and become a part of our family. be a part of our tribe, be a part of our community of like-minded people who are all seeking for a better quality of life in our personal situations. There's a phrase, there's a first time for everything. But it's interesting that there's another phrase that says the more things change, the more they stay the same. I think there's a first time for everything, but the longer I live, the less I see a first time for everything. I tend to more often see a remake of something that's already been created and now it's been repackaged or repurposed. In society, we're always talking about sustainability, repackaging, resourcing, recycling, and reusing things. I think the one constant that we can plant in our life is the constant of wanting to know, to learn, to understand, and to find our why. One of the books that transformed my life was Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And I liked it because when I heard it, it actually fundamentally changed my thinking process. Now, consider this. We all have something that we do, and there's a particular way that we do it. It's kind of like a what we do and how we do it. But how often do we ask ourselves the question, why do we do it? And Simon posed this question by creating in this TED Talk that I saw him do a few years ago, this golden circle. He drew a circle on just a regular whiteboard, and it was an outer ring, an intermediate ring, and a center ring, like a target or a bullseye. The outer ring was what? What is it that you do? The interior or the intermediate ring was, how do you do that? But the center ring was the question as to, why do you do it? And a lot of us have answers to that question. When I was first asked, why do I do what I do? I said, it's because it's the way I make an income and I do it well. That's true. But do you enjoy it because it means something to you? Does it have a meaningful purpose in your life and give you a reason and a purpose every day to look forward to going out and doing what you're doing? Now, if you are excited about every day that you live and you can't wait to get in there and tackle it, that's great. That's where you want to be. But I learned over the course of the years that these things that I wanted to do, that I set out to do and did, after a while, they weren't meaningful to me anymore. I arrived at a point where I said to myself, it's just a routine and it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. It's a means to an end in the sense that it provided a steady job, a stream of income, benefits, and a degree of community. But every day I would go in, punch the clock, work the hours in the day, go home, decompress, go to bed, go to sleep, and know that tomorrow morning when the alarm clock goes off, I get up and go back and do the same thing again and again and again. And I'm not criticizing that. All I'm trying to say is that we sometimes reach a point where we don't want to do that anymore. It just doesn't provide us fulfillment, because the question we have to ask is this all there is? Is this the way it's going to be for the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years of my life? And I'm not criticizing that either. Being able to have something that you can, as they say, hang your hat on is good. But maybe you're looking for a way to spice it up, to turn it and move it in a different direction. There are ways that can happen. But to do that, you have to have a specific kind of mindset. which brings me to the next point. We'll talk about what is mindset and how can mindset be not just a benefit, but often it becomes a deterrent to our success. I'm going to particularly take notice of three kinds of mindset. I even wrote them down here on my pad. I'm going to talk about, for example, fixed mindsets. And there are books out there, by the way. I have one in particular I'll tell you about that you might want to pick up and read. It's a great insight into understanding the difference between two particular mindsets, that of a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And many of you that listen to this will recognize that because this is not new. This is a concept that is understood and is being taught. But what you may not realize is that there are other mindsets. I prefer to work with threes. So you'll hear me talk about how does a fixed mindset have positives, but also how does a fixed mindset create negatives? I will talk about a growth mindset. What are the positives of that? And I believe that they far outweigh any possible negatives that could occur from a growth mindset. But there'll be a third mindset that I'll talk about, and this one will be a tad bit more controversial because it's actually an entitlement mindset. That's some of the subject matter we'll talk about. And finally, I will talk to you about something that I discovered through my own personal journey that I want to give to you that can, I think, possibly help you in formulating a plan for your life on a day-by-day basis that is built around best practices. And these best practices help you to develop the concept of living forward and getting unstuck. And that is the word resolve, RESOLVE. I have a book that is published and is currently available in paperback and in Kindle form on Amazon, entitled Resolve, Your Blueprint for Intentional Success. Resolve is very meaningful to me because it came into my life a few years ago as a power word. And this power word, with the help of my late wife, Donna, was framed into an acronym. And the 7 letters, RESOLVE, represent behaviors. Behaviors that, if practiced every day, not only become habitual and ingrained and part of your fiber of being, but they are, in a sense, the driving force for helping you have a live forward mindset, a mindset that is growth based, a mindset that is always open to the miracle of discovery, the joy of learning, the excitement of the unexpected, and the opportunity to learn from any and everything while maintaining a resilient personality that will stick to what you believe, but at the same time will be open to the opportunities that are presented to you, and will look and slow down enough to notice and see a whole lot more about what's going on around you than you ever could have imagined. And it's not magical, it's not mystical, it's actually very foundationally fundamental. It works. I can only tell you that it's worked for me. Whether it works for you, I don't know, but I want to share it with you. Finally, one of the things that I hope as time goes on, and hopefully people like, comment, share, and in a sense, subscribe to this program, we will begin our communication as a tribe. We won't always agree. That's okay, because we can't be all things to each other, but there are certain whys that we share. And those whys begin with the idea that if there's something better in life and we want to find it, and we want to know how to move in that direction, and in a sense, get unstuck and shift into a more meaningful and vibrant living forward type of life, this is the opportunity to have that kind of conversation through the feedback loop. As I bring this initial opening episode 1 of Resolve to Live Forward to a close, let me tell you 2 very, very important pieces of information. Through this particular podcast, there will be a reply mechanism. I would ask you to feel free to reply with your comments and feedback. Please don't be unkind. However, that being said, there are people out there that troll. They have nothing better to do. But there is, I believe, people out there that I can call part of my family and I can be a part of theirs. The second and equally important thing is to know that I have a website. That website is johnmorrowcoaching.com. johnmorrowcoaching.com. I'm John Morrow, JOHNMORROW, and the word coaching, johnmorrowcoaching.com. And I have an email tied to that web address, john@johnmorrowcoaching.com. john@johnmorrowcoaching.com. This is how the process will begin. This particular podcast is very crude. No bells and whistles. For those who are seeing this on video, just this very loud orange background and my orange shirt. And by the way, orange is my favorite color, and it's a brand color. And I'll probably from time to time, with your help and understanding, share you some of the reasons why the color orange is such a vibrant, meaningful color and can be important. And colors say a lot about us. So I'm not just saying you need to all start wearing orange. Quite the contrary. You need to be true to yourself. Remember that. Be true to yourself. And being true to yourself means finding your why. And if I can help you find your why, then I've accomplished something. Here's my challenge. Make a note of this podcast. This podcast, I will consistently try to put out 2, 3, and possibly even 4 times per month on a regular basis. At the same time, from time to time, I'm going to recommend that you check YouTube, because I have a YouTube channel. That is John Morrow, DTM. I'll tell you about the DTM sometime. And the other thing I want you to do is I want you to seek to begin to learn through the process of either listening to books or reading books. And you can read books on Kindles or you can buy copies of books. I'm not trying to cause you to become poor because you have books. First book I want to recommend to you, besides my own personal book, Resolve, Your Blueprint for Intentional Success, which is available on Amazon. You can look it up by John Morrow, is the book by Simon Sinek. And I do this gladly because the book has meant so much to me and it has radically transformed me. But the book is entitled Start With Why. Start with why. This is for you. This is for you to look and find how you can get to why you do what you want to do. And by finding out why you do what you want to, you can find out what you yearn to do. And that would be an exciting moment, because then you can set out to figure out how to do that so that you can begin to do what you should be doing. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be with you and for listening to the podcast. Again, reach out to me at john@johnmorrowcoaching.com and check out my website, johnmorrowcoaching.com. This is Resolve to Live Forward. I'm John Morrow. I'm your host. I look forward to being with you again. This is a new journey, a great experiment. I wanted to be successful. I'll ask for your help. Thank you so very, very much for being a part of this first episode and for giving me a chance to have a conversation with you. Goodbye for now.